You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Probably the biggest news to come out of Brian Kelly's media availability on Saturday after practice is the news regarding John Emery, or the questions regarding John Emery, which then led to a report from our friend Brody Miller over at The Athletic. So Brian Kelly was meeting with the media, and he was asked about the running back room as a whole, and that's where he gave a little insight into the goings-on with John Emery.
You know, you guys know the situation with John Emery. I really can't get into the specifics of that because of the Buckley Amendment, but he's certainly a guy that's going to be part of what we do this year. Then Noah Cain, as I mentioned, was really impressed with him today. Amani is a guy that we're going to count on. You know, Williams has been probably as consistent as any back that we've had. And Nick Demas has done a really nice job. So, you know, Leonard Fournette is not in that backfield. I mean, so, you know, we don't have like that marquee guy, if you will, but all of them, you know, complement each other very well. And I think we'll be very effective at that position. And I think each one of them can contribute in a manner that will allow us to be successful at the position.
I don't think that's in any way an insult saying Leonard Fournette is not in that backfield. I think that's a statement of fact. Leonard Fournette is the biggest freak show that's ever walked through the doors at LSU at that position. And Brian Kelly got to see him, you might remember, in 2014 when Fournette was a freshman and LSU played Notre Dame in that Music City Bowl. But the comment about Emery prompted a follow-up, and I believe it was Wilson Alexander from The Advocate who asked it a bit later in the press conference.
With John Emery specifically, I know you said you can't get into the specifics of that, but is he looking at having to miss game time again because of the same issue?
Well, there's obviously, you know, things that I can't talk about relatively. He is in good standing in football. So everything that he's done a great job with us in football.
So he's on track to still be available for the Florida State game?
Everything that he's done for us has been outstanding in football. Anything else that arises would not be, you know, anything that I can comment on because of privacy rights.
So that was on Saturday. Brian Kelly was a bit evasive about John Emery and his availability for the opener against Florida State. And then Brody Miller on Sunday reported that John Emery is set to miss 2 games due to academic suspension. This was in The Athletic, and effectively it is a continuation, as I understand it, from his punishment from a year ago, which caused him to miss, of course, the entire season. Brody did a really good job with the report. A lot of this is stuff that we talked about a year ago, and as it was explained to me after the UCLA game, John Emery sort of fell out of a good standing academically during the COVID year. He had COVID a couple of times. As a matter of fact, Brody even reported this, that Emery's stepfather, Webster Garrison, was hospitalized and on a ventilator with COVID. Emery's grandmother died due to COVID that year as well. And as it's stated in the NCAA academic waivers in the NCAA handbook, Division I and Division II student athletes have to make appropriate annual progress toward earning their degrees. That's credits, that's minimum GPA, all that stuff. If a player falls out of good standing, they can pursue a progress toward degree waiver to restore eligibility. The times when an eligibility waiver is often granted is, and I'm reading directly here, a common circumstance is a student athlete facing a serious medical issue or other personal hardship. So that's when, a year ago, the Emery family retained attorney Don Jackson. Don Jackson, of course, was the same attorney that helped Christian Fulton regain his eligibility. And I had a conversation last year with a staff member after the UCLA game when we learned that John Emery was suspended. And I asked this person off the record, how in the world was he still taking first-team reps all the way up until the Thursday before the UCLA game if his eligibility was in question? And the answer was, we never considered that the waiver would be denied. Because especially with COVID at the time, everybody's eligibility waivers were being granted. And so LSU really didn't have a contingency a year ago They just assumed that Emery would get his waiver and he would be able to play, and ultimately he didn't, and that was like right before the UCLA game when they realized they weren't going to have him, and they tried to appeal over and again, and it didn't come out his way. So the other thing that's interesting, I know some people may think, well, why is he still being punished? As I understand it, when a punishment is handed down, the academic suspension oftentimes can be indefinite until it goes to the progress toward degree waiver committee, and they determine a punishment. So if you remember with Christian Fulton, his punishment initially, this wasn't an academic issue, but his was 2 years, and then they were able to appeal it down to where he was able to play in 2019. So I don't know what John Emery's initial punishment was. What we do know now, as you heard Brian Kelly say it there, is that he's done everything he was supposed to do. As a matter of fact, this was Brian Kelly in the spring. Back in the spring, remember, Kelly was hired in December, so he was here for the spring semester. This was Brian Kelly during the spring semester talking about John Emery.
If they're out there on the practice field, here's what I'm going to tell you. They've passed a robust test of consistency with academics and a day-to-day accountability. Other than that, I can't tell you that he's getting all A's and he's going to be eligible and he's going to be a starter, but he is making the positive progress that we had put him. He's above the line. The standards that we've set for him, he's meeting them. And there's a number of guys that I didn't think would make it, and I'm not saying he's in that. They have exceeded my expectations.
So Brian Kelly sort of lauded the work John Emery did in the spring, said he's above the line and progressing toward playing, which I would assume is why John Emery would be eligible after the second game if the first two are a continuation. I'm granting you that is an assumption that I'm making, sans any other definitive information. For what it's worth, LSU has not confirmed Brody's report. They've also not denied it, but they have not yet confirmed that John Emery would miss the first two games. I did text Don Jackson today, the attorney for John Emery, and I will share with you what he said to me. And I'm summarizing, but he said he's no longer working on the. This was Don Jackson's statement to me. I have no knowledge of the recent issues and am unaware of the circumstances. Heard about it this morning for the first time. So Don Jackson apparently is no longer working on John Emery's case, and apparently he's going to serve out these two games unless if he's able to win an appeal. What is pretty obvious is that Noah Cain and Armani Goodwin are good options. Like we've talked about, we've seen very clearly Brian Kelly understanding this was a real possibility, as evidenced by the fact that when we've watched this team practice, Cain and Goodwin primarily are taking the first team reps, and Emery's running behind them. And this is why. They were clearly planning for this possibility and having those guys as a contingency. The really good news, though, is you can't really tell a noticeable difference, and I don't think that's a knock on Emery so much as it is a compliment to Cain and Goodwin. Y'all, we've talked about it. Noah Cain looks physically really good. I mean, he looks the part. Can he stay healthy? I don't know. I mean, we're all sort of going to figure that out together as the season goes along. Armani Goodwin has very clearly put on good weight, and he is running like a powerful collegiate back. And that's exciting. Both those guys can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So, I think that's really encouraging. Matter of fact, Kelly also talked about Noah Cain on Saturday after the practice, talked about him specifically.
I was really pleased with Noah Cain today, running the ball with some physicality. And again, I think I alluded to this the last time we spoke, is that, he hadn't played a lot of football, and it's kind of coming back to him. And he's a smart kid. He's 224 pounds. He's strong, and he ran with that physicality that we were looking for today. So that was a bright spot for us.
There's no question that losing John Emery for whatever length of time you lose him, you lose an explosive playmaker, and it really hurts your depth. Because if you're rolling out against Florida State and you've got Noah Cain, Armani Goodwin, and Josh Williams, you got two scholarship players. And please, I understand that Josh Williams is on scholarship now, but he came to LSU as a walk-on is the point. You are thin. I mean, the other guy that Brian Kelly mentioned was Nick Demas. I mean, that's another walk-on that you're talking about right now that's in your rotation because you don't have a deep position group there. So, yeah, I mean, they're thin. You have a turned ankle, a tweaked knee, God forbid. Now all of a sudden you got walk-ons in your rotation. So am I comfortable with LSU going into the Florida State game with Noah Cain, Armani Goodwin, and then an athletic quarterback like Jaden Daniels running the football? Absolutely. Am I really holding my breath because the depth is not there? Without question. So, if the NCAA can fast-track John Emery's case, if he can win a waiver appeal before Florida State, that would be awesome. If it happens, whatever happens, we'll certainly talk about it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.